Hello and welcome to the Horticulturalists. I'm Stephen Ryan.
And I'm Matthew Lucas, and we post a video every Friday, so do hit subscribe if you want to follow our continuing adventures.
And don't forget our Monday short. So if you've got a burning horticultural question you'd like to ask me, put it in the comments below. Tell me where you're from so that I've got some context, and we'll get round to answering your question in due course.
Well, we won't, you will.
Yeah.
I'll read them out. He's the expert. Now, Stephen, I have a barometric finger, which is freezing cold.
Yeah.
What are we doing today?
Well, we're in the into winter, I guess you'd have to say, heading towards mid-June. So just remember, our Northern Hemisphere viewers, that this is our winter. And we're going to do another garden walk around my garden. We've done one before?
No, we've done two or three. I've actually lost track, but I will put them all together in a playlist. The idea was we were going to do four, one each season.
Well, we will
anyway.
do it, but they may not be in order. So today is going to be our winter walk around the garden, and we'll have a look at some of the things that are doing their stuff.
Yeah.
And it's surprising how many are. And
True.
It's, yes, it's midwinter, but nonetheless, there's plenty of flowers and certainly lots of foliage to look at as well.
Which is the thing, because a lot of the winter things are about foliage, bark, berries, leaves.
Yeah, and form and shape and texture.
Yep.
So there you go. So we'll be looking at all of that and seeing how my garden stands up at this time of the year.
Okay, let's go. Okay, Stephen, now we've always begun at your driveway here.
We have.
It's chilly,
It
but
is
there
chilly.
there are still things going on. I mean, this is the whole point of your garden, that I guess your idea was that there was always going to be something, whether it's form, foliage, bare branch, bark, flower, berry.
Yes, and so something to entertain me all year round, and hopefully being overt enough to entertain you as well. So
Well,
there you
here
go.
I am. Let's swing around, baby, right round. Let's just change that angle.
Yeah.
All right, let's take a stroll. The first thing that I am looking at and noticing is that burst of fabulous foliage. What's going on here?
All right, so we've got Ferula communis, which has just started to come up.
Yeah.
And you can see it just there. The giant fennel from the Mediterranean region in Europe.
Which we have made a video about, which I will link.
Yes, and it's just coming up and doing its winter wonderfulness.
Yeah.
It's summer dormant, so it disappears in the summer. And I think it works really well in combination with the large elephant's ears, the Alocasias behind. So you've got the big bold leaves of those, the fine, soft, fluffy leaves of the Ferula. I think that's quite a telling combination for the winter. So I think it's
very
really
beautiful.
good.
The other thing we should just point out too is the wonderful bamboo. So bamboo is a constant.
Yes, you've got obviously evergreen foliage and those wonderful culms with their bright yellow. It's part of my garden all year round. So the trick is just to make sure I keep showing off those culms by removing any low growth that becomes a nuisance.
And in winter, the colour is even more noticeable, isn't it? Because there's not a lot of colour, so those golden culms really do show up.
And that's the other thing, of course. A lot of things will be doing their thing at this time of the year that are probably quite there the rest of the year as well, but they don't stand out as well. So they suddenly come into their own.
Like that, which I've never noticed. Is that a variegated bamboo?
Yes, it is. So-
Goodness, I have never noticed that.
Well, see, there you go. See, there's a plant that most of the year probably hides in amongst everything else and doesn't sort of really stand out. But now, because there's not a lot of competition around, it's doing its thing.
Well, talking of variegation, you know that's my favourite subject on earth.
Yes.
Behind us is variegated ivy.
Yes.
And once again, the colours in the winter garden are just so bright and fresh.
Yeah, they are. And this is actually a variety of English ivy called Glacier. And it's actually growing on an old dead gum tree stump. So under there's an old stump of a eucalyptus somewhere. And instead of having the stump removed, being lazy, I decided just to plant something on it. So now I've got what is basically a shrubby ivy, and it looks very handsome, I think.
And flowering in a great pollinator attractant.
Well, it is. The pollinators love the flowers of ivy when it's in flower.
Yeah.
You've just got to make sure it doesn't take off and you manage it.
Now, again, berries. This is not a coffee bush.
No, although it could well be seen as one. And we did do a story about Aucuba way back.
Yeah.
And so that's Aucuba japonica in its form called longifolia, meaning long narrow leaves. It's a female one, so it gets lovely berries. Its boyfriend is over there, and he just sits in the background not doing much. But
As boys should.
yes, and that one though, the female one, is just lovely. So I think it's a great plant.
Mooch, mooch, mooch. And then we come to yet more foliage, which again looks even more striking at this time of year.
Yes, and I think we have mentioned this plant before in some of our videos, and this is a dwarf version of New Zealand Pittosporum tenuifolium that goes under the reasonably appropriate name of Tom Thumb.
Don't know if it's appropriate.
Well, it sort of is. Tom Thumb was dwarf, and this is a miniature version. I mean, that's a 30-year-old plant, so it's taken a long time to get as big as it is.
It's 6.5 feet tall anyway.
Yeah,
that ain't small in my book. But anyway.
Yeah, well, it is comparatively small, so anyhow.
Now we are sort of at the head of the driveway, so you can see the drive behind us. Above us is that awful diseased variegated elm
that you don't particularly like.
Actually,
but I have a great soft spot for, so
beautiful.
we can agree to disagree on that one.
And there's the fantastic Mahonia. Now we have done a Mahonia epic, which we'll link.
Yep, and that one's Buckland, so it's one of the media versions, not as in the social media, but as in the name is Mahonia media.
Oh, right.
Yeah, so there you go. So,
I thought you said media. Like what's
no,
needy?
media.
Media.
Yeah, yes, I should
What does that mean? What does the media mean?
It means it's intermediate between two forms.
Oh, right.
So
okay.
there you go. So it's a hybrid.
So we're now going to curve around the drive.
Yes.
Which we have walked down before. We have stopped at this plant many times before.
Yeah.
Just tell everyone again what it is.
All right, Semele androgyna. It's an asparagus relative that comes from the Canary Islands and Madeira.
And where have you just been?
Madeira.
What did you see?
In the wild, I saw Semele growing, so it was very exciting. And that's something that we'll discuss in due course, I'm sure, is seeing plants that you're familiar with in your own garden in the wild will often give you a completely new concept of what the plant can or can't do. You can see habitats and you can understand where it grows in the wild, what it grows with. Yes, so it was very exciting to see Semele growing in the wild in Madeira.
Yeah. And you sent me a picture of it growing around a doorway.
Yes.
Like you would grow wisteria or something. It was stunning.
Yeah, that was in a fabulous hotel that we visited the garden of while we were in Madeira. Yes, it blew me away, particularly seeing the Semele used as a very formal feature. It looked like a wreath had been put around the door.
It was
just
stunning,
beautiful.
Stunning.
So,
all right, let's carry on.
All right, let's go. Of course, leaves are really important at this time of the year, and one of the groups of plants which we've done an epic on that I think are particularly useful in the garden are, of course, the Cyclamen. Hederifolium, the autumn flowering ones, finished blooming, but its foliage is making lovely carpets all around the garden at the moment.
Now, we're just sort of cutting through the bed in front of the house, which is sort of like a forest meander with lots of beautiful things, including bamboo.
Yes.
Now, we made our video about your flowering bamboo, which is still alive.
Yes, it's still alive and will be for some time.
Yeah.
We're going past the New Zealand wire netting bush, Muehlenbeckia astonii, which doesn't make huge impact from the visual perspective, but texturally, this sort of wiry sort of plant I think is rather fun.
And we made a video about
Divaricates.
Divaricates.
Yeah.
You divaricate.
Yes.
Now, what I wanted to look at through here is these fabulous berries here.
Yes.
Now, what have we got going on there?
All right, well, that's the hermaphrodite form of Ruscus aculeatus, which is a fabulous dry shade tolerant plant, and its berries are on it practically the whole year. So
beautiful.
Very useful little plant, only grows to about 1 metre tall, slow growing, but those berries are quite beautiful.
And I see a little palm.
Yes, I like to have the tropicalness of a palm around the place, and that's a rare form of Chinese windmill palm, Trachycarpus fortunei Wagnerianus, which is really hard to get, and it has quite small leaves on a slender trunk, so it'll be quite handsome once it starts to get its act together, but it's still small yet.
Beautiful. And then we have got flowering here. Do you want to just sit on the bench and then I can show the people?
All right, so here we have the flowers of Arisarum vulgare, the monk's cowl, which is one of the arum relatives, European in origin. Flowers are small and subtle, the spotty leaves are lovely, and it will probably put shudders down the spine of some home gardeners, because if you plant it in your garden, be aware that you'll never get rid of it. So you've got to be happy to have monk's cowls in your garden. I like them, they grow well under trees in difficult conditions, but I wouldn't plant it in lots of spots. So I'm happy with it here, and I will try and manage it that it doesn't go anywhere else. And for the winter, it gives me some interesting flowers and lovely foliage.
And then the willow, which has that beautiful sort of distorted branching, naked in winter. We've also covered that in...
Yes, we did that in our divaricated story, I think, from memory. So it was looking quite nice as a winter feature, just for its bare stems.
Yeah.
So as we come back up the driveway again, we're going past all sorts of foliagey plants, but nothing of great sort of import. But as we head towards the perennial border, there's a couple of things going on in there that could be well worth having a look at.
All right.
So as we come up this path, the perennial border's ahead of us. I've got a winter fruiting plant doing its thing at the moment, and that's the Mexican hawthorn, Crataegus mexicanus, and it will have its yellow fruit on it for months. So it's well worthwhile considering if you want winter colour.
Yeah.
And as we come into the border, there's a couple of things of interest here. The grasses, of course, have gone into their wintry sort of strawy look. So the ornamental grasses are looking, well, like ornamental grasses should at this time of the year, as strawy, half-dead things, but the texture's good. But yes, what is...
Before me, oh my goodness.
Yes, now here's a plant that I'm very excited by, because I don't get it to flower terribly often because the frost normally hits it. Now this is Acanthus senii that comes from the mountains of Ethiopia, of all places. How exotic's that? And it's one of the few acanthuses that come in this sort of wonderful brick orangey red colour. And it's an evergreen shrub. It can get quite large. I saw one in the south of France that was probably about 4 metres tall by 4 metres wide, and I'm hoping mine will never get to that size. The leaves are remarkably prickly. It's biting me on the leg as we speak, and in fact I have had a client bring one back to me and said, I can't live with this any longer. Every time I go into the bed, it bites me back. You do have to understand its rather prickly habits, and it is slightly suckering, so you will end up with a thicket of it, but I think it's a remarkable and amazing plant. So I'm really pleased my Acanthus senii has deigned to flower for me this year. All right, here we go, pushing our way through
the veggie garden,
yes.
which, you know, your favourite spot.
Yeah, we're not going to engage
Gardening
too
Australia,
much with it,
flashbacks. We've actually been in the veggie garden a bit this year, though.
Well, we have actually, and you know, the garlic's coming up, the broad beans are growing, so you know, it's all good, I guess.
It is. Now we're going, though, I think, to a place. We're going to a place we've never been before, but I don't think in our garden tours we've actually walked down this border. Maybe we have, though.
I don't remember, but there's a couple of plants down this border which I grandiosely call the citrus walk, because there's some
There's
citrus.
one tree. Oh no, there's two.
No, there's
three now.
Well, there's several over in amongst other things. So there are actually a number of citrus, but it's not about the citrus. We're coming to have a look at two plants, both sort of American plants, I guess. And one of them is above my head. And if I pull the branch down.
Look at that.
Now, this is a Mexican tree daisy, Montanoa. It's supposed to have a scent, but I can't smell anything.
No, not a scarab.
Now, most of the Montanoas are too cold sensitive for me to grow. This one often gets frosted down just as it's coming into flower, but because we haven't had a decent frost this year, it's flowering its little head off, or its giant head off.
It's not little. I was going to say, look, it arches.
Yeah, it's probably
twice the height of me.
Yeah, it's probably 4 metres or more tall.
Yeah.
High winter flowering. Lovely little white daisies. This is Montanoa arborescens leucantha, and it is the only one I've been able to grow. I've tried several others. Some have much more spectacular foliage than this, and I'd love to grow them. There's one that goes under the wonderful name of Montanoa bipinnata fida. which I'd love to be able to grow. I've tried 2 or 3 times, and every time we get a decent frost, it gets completely knocked out. So Montanoa is doing its thing for me this winter, which is fabulous.
So not particularly hardy, but they are cooler climate plants.
Yeah, they come from the mountains of Mexico where they probably don't get a lot of frost, but it gets cool. They flower in the winter. So you need that sort of climate where it's not tropical per se, but you just don't get much frost. So if you're almost frost-free, you should consider growing some of the Montanoas. And they grow well in Melbourne.
And I was always going to say Rachel, gardening Duenza.
Yeah.
So she doesn't get frost particularly.
Yeah, so she could probably have a crack at it
There
as
you
well.
go. All right.
Another plant that's flowering its head off at the moment, which I think is just stunning, is this plant from the Americas called Lepichinia hastata. It's a salvia relative.
Ah, yeah, it looks
so
like
you can sort of get the drift. It has these lovely soft purple flowers well into the winter.
Yeah.
It'll finish off about midwinter. It also has these large soft grey leaves, which I find particularly tactile. And in fact, if you rub the leaves, and I wish we had smell-o-vision, it has a wonderful sort of aromatic smell to the foliage.
Yeah. Quite fresh, almost piney.
Yeah, I'm not quite sure what it smells of, but it's just
Clinically,
I mean, really in a nice way. Scent. And so hence it's planted right next to the path, so that when I walk down the path, I can rub the leaves as I go down the path. So there you go.
And that is quite important to have things with fragrance that you brush past.
Oh yes, yes. I think it makes another element to a garden.
All right, we're going to double back and go out.
Yes, we're going to go out the back now.
Okay. So heading through the veggie garden at the back, and
yes, we've got to squeeze through the paths
before we go any further, the Abutilon in flower.
Isn't that gorgeous? This is a lovely apricot orange one, and I don't have a name for it. A friend of mine gave it to me and said, "You'll love this one, Stephen." And I have spent ages on my computer Googling different forms of Abutilon, and I can't find one that quite matches this particular orange, but I think it's just gorgeous, and it flowers for months.
Beautiful, and not much is in bloom at this time of year.
No, it's true. There's not that much in flower, so it's always a great thing to see something as pretty as this flowering its little head off in the middle of winter.
Yes. Past the Sontius.
Yes, of course, we love Sontius, and the foliage is great.
Everyone asks.
Yes.
And Brugmansia.
Yes, and there's a few yellow flowers on the Brugmansia at the moment.
So we're coming out to the large pond. We've made many an epic about your ponds. I've just noticed your Aeoniums are about to bloom.
Yes, so there's plenty of those around in the garden at the moment. So over the next couple of weeks, there'll be a mass of yellow starry flowers.
There they all are behind us.
Yes, there they are. Beautiful things that they are.
There is the pond behind us there.
Yes, you can just see the water, I hope.
Leaving the environs of the pond, and there's your...
What you call my pointless pier.
Your pointless pier, the bridge to nowhere.
Yes, exactly. And we're going to fight our way through the echiums and other sundry things that are growing along the sides of the path. Oh, and yes, there's a few late flowers on the Iochroma. This is one of the orange ones, and this is Iochroma fuchsioides.
Fuchsioides?
Yeah. I think it's sometimes listed as Coquinia as well. So there you go. So
across the boardwalk, which is... There we are.
It's a very odd looking.
Beautiful shot.
Yeah, lovely shot there. And as we come across here, another thing that's looking particularly splendid at the moment are the acanthuses, and that's Acanthus Hollard's Gold, which I think is a particularly lovely form and definitely worth growing because it's far less invasive than the normal green one.
And you have the National Acanthus collection.
I certainly do. So we've actually visited 2 today with my Senii and my Hollard's Gold.
Tetrapanax Grove, we visited many a time before.
Yes, so
look at the leaves above us. It's just beautiful.
Yes, now that gives a tropicalness to the garden,
it
for
does.
Sure. We're coming now down to where there's a couple of rather interesting arums in leaf. So
I'm just going to swing.
Here we have actually one that I imported years ago from England, and it's an arum called White Winter. So it's just a form of Arum italicum, but with particularly good variegated foliage.
Ducking past, another variegated bamboo.
Yes, yes, I've got them everywhere.
And another Abutilon. And that one is just so pretty.
Yeah, another lovely little orange one, and that's been in flower almost year round.
Yeah,
so
incredible.
What more could you want?
And I think too, we were just mentioning that this part of the garden is still so beautiful even in winter. still got a tropical vibe because you've got all these really textural evergreens.
Yes, and I think that's what holds this particular part of the garden together very well. And
Look
I have
at
to
that
say,
bird's nest fern.
yeah, I mean, you look at that bird's nest, isn't that something? I mean, really.
Massive.
It's huge and it looks absolutely fabulous. So I love those sort of big, bold, leafy plants because they really hold their own. And even when the weather's a bit miserable, you can look out into the garden and pretend you're in the tropics somewhere. Yes, exactly.
Oh, this is getting quite overgrown, Stephen.
Yes, well, I've been away, so, you know, give me some time and we'll get stuck in and do a little bit of pruning here, fight your way past the palm grass.
Okay. Woo! Now,
Yes.
we've featured this plant before,
Yes.
but it's great to just see the new foliage at the moment.
Yeah, that's the Vietnamese camellia, which is now considered to be extinct in the wild, Camellia amplexicaulis, which I think is just stunning.
Yeah. And we've made a video about that, and it's actually got lots of flower buds.
Yeah, so hopefully I'll get some nice flowers on it. But speaking of which, there's another camellia virtually at our feet, which is in fact in flower.
Yeah.
And that is Camellia Yuletide, which is one of the little Sasanqua camellias, which
Now-
I love.
Well, to your point, Stephen, a lot going on.
Yes, exactly. It's surprising what can be happening in your garden if you're a little bit innovative in what you plant and how you use plants in your garden. So it should entertain all year round.
I think the thing for me, you know, my passion not for variegation, but at this time of year, it really does
yes.
show its true colours.
It does. It zings in the winter garden.
It
So I
does.
think variegations are really important. And we've seen lots of interesting textures and forms as we've been going around as well. So they're the main things. I hope you've enjoyed it. I hope that those in the Northern Hemisphere aren't too annoyed with us reminding them that winter is just around the corner because we're having ours now. But you know, a garden should entertain all year round, and I hope mine does.
It does, it does, it does. Well, we aim to entertain all year round as well, but what could we be doing next week, Stephen?
Oh, goodness only knows. But we'll be doing something, hopefully, that will have to do with plants, I'm sure.
We will. But until then, if you want to know what we're doing, do hit subscribe and the notification bell, and you'll know exactly what's going on.
And don't forget the Monday Short. So if you've got a question you'd like to ask me, pop it in the comments section below, and at some point we'll get round to answering it for
We will
you.
indeed. But until then, we look forward to seeing you next week.
Bye all.